Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is nice to see some old faces and obviously a lot of new faces. Just to explain, my day job is primarily I'm a sales trainer, so I train people how to sell and I do a lot in the exhibition industry. And primarily my logic is I go to any show, and you guys have done this as visitors, and you can see two stands separated probably no more than by 2 meters of carpet, both doing roughly the same sort of thing, and one of them is really busy and one of them is really quiet. And the interesting thing is they've both paid the same amount of money to be there. So the thrust of what I'm going to try and talk about for the next sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, is what is it that you guys can do to make sure that you have the busy stand? You know, the good news is it's not about spending more money. In fairness, folks, if you spent, for the sake of argument, another £1,000 on a prettier floral display, you're not going to generate an extra £1,000 of business as a result of it. But there are some behavioural things that you guys can do that will actually make a big difference to your participation. Okay? So my intention is to try and address the main things that you guys can look at that will make a big impact on your participation. So what are the things that you can and should be thinking about beforehand? A lot of the things I'm going to focus on are things that you can do during the days of the show, because that will make a big difference. And then clearly there's some things that you need to do once the show is over. I guess objectives are one of the main things that people talk about, and because I'm sad and I haven't really got a life, I like going to a large number of shows. I don't really mind very much whether they are trade shows or consumer shows, whether they're about widgets, flanges, or whatever else. I'm just quite interested in why people exhibit. So I will go up to exhibitors at random and ask them a simple question, which is, why are you here? I'm quite interested to know why people exhibit. Now, I guess when you ask people these questions, you probably have a perception of the sort of responses you're likely to get. Cutting it slightly short, this is in true Miss World fashion, in reverse order. These are the most common responses I get by frequency. So in fourth place, I get this one. Oh, because it's my turn this year. Yes, couldn't come last year, so I'm here this year. Okay. Worryingly, next one is because somebody was sick and they were wheeled in last minute, and aren't I a martyr? Look at what I can do. Worryingly, in second place, the most common answer I get is we're here for networking. It's really good. Exhibitor party on the Wednesday night, fantastic. The really frightening thing, folks, is my top answer is that one. I don't know, because someone in marketing booked it, because we always come. Oh, because our competitors are here, that's why we're here. And you think, okay, maybe I'm being a bit unfair, and maybe my question, why are you here, is a bit ambiguous, so let's make it a bit more specific, and I now ask the question directly, what is your objective in exhibiting? Again, two most frequent responses. In second place, I get a rather dodgy one, but for the sake of argument, let's report it. I just want to get through the next few days. And it's almost like they see it as an inconvenience, that I've got to set my computer out of office, and then you go back and there's all those emails waiting, and they actually miss the point that during the 2 or 3 days of the show, they can probably do more business than they could 2 or 3 months either side of it. However, the top response I get in terms of what is your objective for exhibiting is that. How scary is that? I say, it was a great show. We ran out of brochures within the first half day, or ran out of business cards in 25 minutes. It was fantastic. I guess, folks, in the absence of any other metric, it is a metric. But trust me, even at Simon's prices, it is cheaper to hire a skip. And you could probably get away with a lot more brochures than you could by just dispensing them or vending them off your stand. So objectives really are the key things. People clearly don't understand why they're there and what they're trying to achieve, despite your efforts as the marketing person or the salesperson who's booked the stand. So I ask people often the question, what is your objective? Why are you there? And I guess, given sufficient time and a following wind, I could go around and ask you guys what your main objectives for exhibiting. If you indulge me slightly, I'll paraphrase the most common responses that I get in terms of when you ask people this question, you put them into a group. And what they come up with are a range of objectives varying from launching new products, whether it's just sort of introducing a new range or just educating the market. It could just be simply that they're there because it's a big PR and a branding exercise, which again is a good objective. Checking out the competition, often happens, and then to meet specific types of buyers. So maybe we're going this year because we're trying to get new business, or we're going this year because we want to schmooze with existing clients, or a combination, or we're looking for international buyers, or we're looking for buyers with a budget over a certain number. So these are the sorts of objectives that most people have above and beyond the let's just get rid of brochures. What I would encourage you to do, guys, for next year, or the next show, is to actually try and make your objectives a bit more real. Now, I've just put down some token numbers here, but for example, set an objective that says, I want to try and get 12 leads, or 15, or 30, or whatever you think is appropriate, okay? Or, I'm there because I want to try and get 3 sales on the day, if it's appropriate for you, or make X number of appointments, yeah? And the idea is, at least this way, you've got a tangible metric that says, yeah, we know that we made 3 good qualified leads every hour or whatever it was, and those leads will convert into this amount of money, and therefore that's how much we hope to generate just as a result of being at the show. Now clearly, if you exceed your objectives within the first hour, then great, don't be scared to change your objectives. But at least it gives you something to go for, and you'll know how well or how bad your return on investment could be in advance, notwithstanding what's going to be said to you guys later. Less is more as well. Sometimes I think what people do is they try and have too many objectives. They're trying to achieve everything by having one stand at one show. And actually, this is definitely a case of less is more. You imagine we're a marketing department, we're saying, right, we're going to produce a bit of corporate literature. So we all put it together, and one votes, yeah, it's really great, we're about to put it to press, and someone says, oh, if we put some photographs in, then we could give it to the salespeople, and they could use it as a sales tool. So we think, great, so we add to this brochure, and suddenly it's got some photographs. And they go, do you realise, if we put some photographs of the staff in there, then that's really good, because we could use it as an induction tool for new starters. And they could, good idea. And it becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. And actually, in the end, you've got this very weighty tome that doesn't really help anybody achieve any of the objectives they set out originally. So what I would say to you is the best tip is try and achieve one thing, or 2 things, because then some of the other things like generating publicity and all that will happen just by virtue of you guys being there. I'm not going to bang on too much about objectives, folks, because it's clearly the most important, in my view, reason for being there. But certainly what I would say is, number one, is agree what those objectives are as a company. Once you've agreed them, try and make them as specific as you can. Okay? And also, let's imagine that your objective is, I'm looking for a new business. Well, you need a plan that says, but what happens if an existing client rocks up? And then once we've got them, what are we going to do with them? Are we going to spend half an hour of our time with each customer? Or if they're really, really serious, is it worth an hour and a half of our time? Or do we just want to get 5 minutes, make an appointment, whack them off the stand, and then get the next one? So again, it's about thinking about how brutal you need to be with your time. Once you've got them, clearly link them to your corporate aims, but the most important thing, probably the unsaid thing, often is make sure you communicate it to the people within your company, because often the people on the stand don't understand why you've booked it in the first place. And that clearly is an important issue in terms of trying to get that result that you guys are all after. Now, the other sort of obvious area to start with, I guess, is from the business point of view in terms of what their perception is and the fact that we recognise that first impressions count. Ladies and gentlemen, we know, and we've heard many, many times, we probably said them ourselves, that you shouldn't judge a book by the cover. The reality is that we all do. And no matter how open-minded you think you are, you can't help but be influenced by that first impression. And I guess, you look at real life for examples of this. Think about instances where first impressions are really important. Think about going, let's say, to a presentation like this. There's probably going to be a huge difference in your perception if the first speaker stands up in a suit, in a 3-piece suit, with a bowler hat, or in a pair of jeans. And that's before they've even said anything. So we do tend to have certain expectations, and that colours our first impression. But take something like a job interview. Imagine you go for a job interview. How quickly, folks, would you reckon the typical interviewer takes before they form a first impression of the candidate? What do you reckon? 9 seconds. I think maybe even less. Yeah, I think as soon as you walk through the door, they form an overall picture. Too tall, too short, too fat, too ugly. Some qualify on all counts. How long is it then, do you reckon, folks, before they decide, yes, you've got the job, or no, you haven't? How long does that process take, that secondary process? What do you reckon? Not much longer. Yeah, not a lot longer, that's for sure. The average interview in the UK currently, and this is for 2013-14, the average interview time is currently running at 45 minutes. Okay? That's the average. Now, bear in mind, some people have 2- and 3-day appraisal centres. There must also be some pretty short interviews that bring the average down to 45 minutes, which is interesting because it's gone down. It used to be 55 minutes. Now, that's not to say within a very short time, 3 seconds, you've got the job or you haven't got the job. But what they're saying is that there's a first impression that's fixed in as little as the first 2 or 3 minutes. Now, the difference, I think, between the professional and the amateurs, the professionals are aware of this, and they spend the rest of that interview testing whether that first impression was right or wrong. And it's the amateur who's pretty cutting it short and going, it's gut feeling, you got the job, or no, you haven't. So let's just imagine, take the job interview example. Let's imagine we found 2 candidates who were, as near as we could manage it, clones of each other. Okay? In the sense that they're both from the same background, the same education, the same work history. And I guess the way to look at this is simply to imagine each of these two candidates has a good point, a bad point, a good point, and a bad point. This person's identical, good point, bad point, good point, bad point. If there was something to distinguish the two candidates from each other, I guess what you would say is, let's just imagine, for the sake of argument, the first candidate walks in, creates a really good first impression, and imagine the second candidate, for the sake of argument, comes in, creates a really bad first impression. I accept there are plenty of scales of grey in between. Now, what would happen in real life, folks? First candidate would walk in, create a really good first impression. Interviewer would look at her and think, hello. But, we profess we could be wrong, but, we'll just check it out. But we think it's fine. So it starts off, first good point. Ha, ha, ha. See the way she walked in? I knew she was good. Rock and roll. Okay, there's a bad bit. Nobody's perfect. 5 of, oh, see, confirmation. See, I knew she was good. I knew it. I'm just feeling in my waters. Okay, there's a bad bit. Fine. Keep an eye on that. Basically, yes, go to the next step, which she does. Seconds later, candidate number 2 walks in. Candidate number 2 walks in, creates a really bad first impression. And if you look at her and think, I can't believe, however, please God, she can't be all this bad. However, we're here now, might as well go through the motions, right? But doubt it, but professional, I'll test it just in case. First good point, I knew she couldn't be all bad. Right? Didn't take long, you see, the truth fell out. I knew she was dodgy the moment she walked in. Well, whoopee-doo, see, look, it's confirmation. No way, no job. Sadly, folks, that's what happens in real life. Now, what is sadder than sad, McSad, on a sad day, in Sad Town, obviously, is that this process doesn't just restrict itself to a job interview. This happens all the time. This happens socially. You imagine you go to a party, and you turn up alone. You walk into the room, and there's only 2 people in the room. One over there, very smart, very attractive, very racy. One over there, dirty, disgusting, drunk, probably diseased. Right? You walk in alone, you've got to go and talk to one of them. Who are you going to go and talk to? Unless you recognise a kindred spirit, most people walk up to one that's quite racy, and once they get chatting to them, you discover they're a filthy old perv. And yet the drunk was really nice. But how many of us, hand on heart, I wonder, would say, do you know what, I better go and talk to that filthy old reptile, because underneath it all, there might be a really nice person. We don't do that. Now, folks, I was about to say pretend, but this might be true. Pretend you're a really nice person, working for a really nice company, selling some really nice products and services. The problem is, you don't know how to behave on your exhibition stand. Right? So a visitor walks in, and as they're having a look around, they spot you behaving uniquely, shall we say, on your exhibition stand. That visitor is not going to go, it's such a shame they don't know how to behave on their exhibition stand, because underneath it all, I bet there's some really nice people selling really nice products and services for a really nice company. What they're going to do is go give an alert and give you a wide berth. So the key to all of this, I guess, is to understand that people will judge you just by that first impression, how they look at you. They're going to judge you by your graphics. They're going to judge you by how big your logo is on your stand. And some people say, I need a big logo. I like a big logo, me. And the problem with a big logo is if I recognise your logo, I think, I recognise them, I know who they are, I don't need to go and talk to them. And they'll walk past your stand. And if they don't recognise your logo, they go, I've no idea who they are. And they're going to walk past your stand. Neither of which you're trying to achieve. So think about what is the messaging that you're giving. Are you actually making it clear what you can do for them? Because I think those are the key things. It's about the first impressions, everything. It's how you stand. Are you there, open, smiling, good eye contact? Or if you're there, you've got a shield and a clipboard and you're sort of marching up and down your stand. Yeah? Are you busy talking to other people on your stand? Are there too many of you? Is it really scary that, oh my God, look at all these people. Oh, they all, no, blimey, now what do I do? I'm not going to go there. I'll come back later. And they don't, or they'll get captured by somebody else. And actually, you haven't got long for this process to take place. If you work it out, all the research that's been done suggests you're only looking at about 10 to 12 seconds. Because actually, folks, 10 to 12 seconds is about the average length of time it takes the average visitor to walk past the average stand. Now, unless your stand is very thin and long, in which case it's got a bit longer, that's what we've got to talk about. You know? So people literally will make that snapshot decision, yes, I'm going to stop, no, I'm not. I think also it's worth bearing in mind some of the things that we know. It would be, I suppose, an ideal world if there was such a thing as a robo-visitor. And we knew that we wanted ones with size 8 feet, and they all had a badge saying size 8 or size 9. And the problem is we don't. And the trouble with that, of course, is all the people that walk through the doors, we don't know how many of those we do want to speak to. The one thing we do know is if we don't want to speak to all of them, that's for sure. And the problem, I guess, when you look at who you do want to speak to is how do you identify the potential that you want to interact with or engage with. We do some work, for example, with the boat show, and you've got some of these yachts there which are, I mean, they start at something, tens of millions of pounds. And the problem is you don't know whether the scrote that just walked onto your boat with a hole in his jumper is an eccentric multimillionaire who can buy a fleet of what you're selling, or whether it's just a tramp who's coming in because it's cold outside. And therefore, in a way, we're there in the same sort of position. How do we know whether they're serious, whether they're not serious, whether they've got a big budget or not? I guess we know certain things. We know that there are certain things that they have in common. They like certain things. They hate or dislike certain things. And they come to any show armed with a set of expectations of things that we know that they like or dislike about you, the exhibitor, but also about the show. You know, they know it's going to be a schlep. They know it's going to be expensive for a sandwich. They know. And what we need to do, I guess, is with the information that we have, we need to try and find out why they come. Because then if we can give it to them, we've got them in the palm of our hands. And there's lots of research that's been done. This particular bit of research was done by the EIA, which is the Events Industry Alliance. And what they tried to do is try to research your customers in terms of why do they come to a show? What do they like? What do they look for? What winds them up? What do they dislike? What are they trying to avoid? And in terms of the main bits of information, it's interesting enough, it's very consistent whether it's a trade event or whether it's a consumer event. And at first there was a lot of controversy about, I can't believe it's the same for trade and consumer. Are you sure that... And actually, yes, of course it's going to be the same, because ultimately they are populated by the same things, which is people. So people still buy from people, and there are certain things that they like and dislike. Main reason they go to a show, what would you reckon, folks? You have to have a guess. Why would most visitors visit a show? Main thoughts? New ideas, yeah. Main thing is, what's new, what's up, what's the latest? They're there almost like on a gossip mission. What's going on? And the other thing, I guess, the second reason people give you for turning up is that they've got an issue and they're there looking to try and source that issue. Now, sometimes that issue is at the front of their mind, in which case they're there on a mission, and sometimes it's at the back of their mind, and in conversation with you, the exhibitor, they say, I didn't realise that you did that. Actually, that reminds me, we've got an issue where suddenly out comes the main reason for being there. In terms of main wind-ups, again, it's not rocket science. The thing that most visitors hate is being sold to, which is quite interesting when you ask most exhibitors why do they exhibit. They say, I'm there to try and sell stuff. So potentially we've got a clash. Second issue, I guess, is they ask you a question and you go, dunno. Or the person that can answer that question is on their lunch. Can you come back later? Or they're not here, they're here on Wednesday. Can you come back on Wednesday? And actually, time and time again, we know that visitors don't come back. They'll just keep on asking until they find someone who can answer their question, and usually it's that company that they end up doing business with. So, if you've got a product, for example, that's very technical, and you're being asked a technical query, if you don't know the answer, go, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. You've got to find out soon. And therefore, it tells you things like, make sure that some of the people on your stand are technical or able to answer the technical questions. If logistically, maybe you're a smaller company and you haven't got those resources, then at least make sure they're on the end of a mobile phone. So if necessary, you can say, I'll give them a call now and I'll find out for you here and now. So those are the sorts of things, top line, that we know people like about visiting shows and dealing with you guys as exhibitors. I guess your interesting point here is that you've got to understand who from those thousands of visitors you want to deal with, and what can you do to encourage them onto your stand, and what can you do to actually also repulse the ones that you don't really want on your stand. Because that's your ideal scenario, where you're only seeing the sort of people that you want to attract. I know, for example, I go to, in my case now, training exhibitions as a training company. And one of the problems I face is I see a lot of people looking for jobs. I'm a trainer and I do this course, can I come and actually, my logic is I'm there to sell, not to be sold to. So in a way, I don't want those people, so I need a mechanic that says, right, if I get that inquiry, take their card, follow up, or give them your business card, tell them to call you on Friday next week, or whatever it happens to be. So again, it's trying to sort of only spend your time with the people that have the potential that you want to deal with. What I've tried to do, folks, in the interest of time, is to give you almost like my frequently asked questions, best advice, tips, techniques, do's and don'ts. Again, as an exhibitor personally, I can tell you the more of these things I do that work, and the more of the things I know don't work and I avoid, the better my show is going to be. Hopefully a lot of this is going to be common sense. It's not always common practice. As those of you guys that are going to have a quick tour around EcoBuild will see, some do and some don't. So mechanically, my most common sort of questions that people ask me is like, number one is, should we wear a uniform? Now, by uniform, I don't mean, gold cap, braid. I mean, should we look the same? And the answer is overwhelmingly, yes, you should. So if, for example, you decide you're going to wear black, then everybody should be in black. Not black with a fleck or black with a stripe. Same with ties or collars. If you're going to wear ties, everyone wears ties. You can't pull rank because, I'm the MD, I'm not going to wear one, or I am going to wear one. You should have that uniform look. And the reason for that, folks, is really important, because you've all probably done this in a social environment or even a retail environment. Think about it, you're going to a shop, and you hunt high and low, you're looking for a particular product or service. You can't find it for love nor money. In desperation, because you usually have to be, you turn to the sales assistant and you go, excuse me, do you stock such and such? And they go, I'm sorry, I don't work here. And they say, I'm sorry for thinking you're the sort of person who does, because I'm sorry for giving you the impression that I am the sort of person who... And you don't hear them more embarrassed. And the point is this, if I walk onto your stand and there's two of your colleagues talking to each other, but you look different, I don't know whether one of you is a visitor and one of you works there. So the risk, to me, is I can look like a right prune if I interrupt you. So rather than put myself in that position, I will not come onto your stand until I'm absolutely sure. And in that time, I can see somebody else will be grabbed by someone else. But if I can see absolutely categorically that you both work on the stand, I'm going to have no compunction at all in coming up and asking a question. So the logic is, a lot of logic behind the things I'm going to say are proven and tested, but that's the sort of reason why. Second thing, often people say, Simon, what about these gimmicks? And you often see lots of people with gimmicks. Should we have a gimmick? And actually, the most common type of gimmick, I guess, is a cardboard box with a slot in the top. Put your business card in and win whatever it happens to be. Champagne, salmon. And again, people ask the question, do these things work? And the answer is absolutely brilliant at getting names and addresses of people who like to eat salmon or drink champagne. Not necessarily people that are going to be your customer. And that's the problem, is that if your gimmick is something with universal appeal, if you have win an iPad, well, everyone wants an iPad, therefore you're going to get lots of business cards. But if you try and make it something that will only appeal to the target market you are after, suddenly you're cooking on gas. We work with the boat show here, and often there was one guy there last year, and his thing was going to be a free boat cleaning service. That's what he did. So he just had, as a voucher, put your thing in and win a thing. So he didn't get thousands and thousands of business cards, but the ones he did get were from people that had a boat that they wanted cleaning, and weirdos, obviously. So really, it's just a way of trying to focus very much what you want. Gimmicks are also very good, folks, if you are selling a service rather than a product, because often with a product, they can touch it and feel it and break it and smell it and taste it and all the other good things. But with a service, it's sometimes very difficult. Again, myself as an example, as a training company, what do? Line my walls with agendas? Oh, how interesting is that? Line up the trainers and say, feel the quality? Actually, that one has merits to it. But the idea being is sometimes use a gimmick in order to get people onto your stand, and then you can interact with them. And those gimmicks can be as simple as you like. Sometimes it's just a case of, the simplest one I ever saw once, I remember, was a photograph that someone took of. They bought a load of gadgets and boys' toys and blah, blah, blah. Took a photograph, blew it up into a huge picture, made it into a jigsaw puzzle, and then they mailed out pieces of the jigsaw to the people that they wanted to invite. And basically, the letter just said, come to our show, put this thing on our jigsaw puzzle, whatever's under it is yours. And folks, honestly, when the doors opened, and I have to say, sadly, it was mostly men, they were there with a floor plan in one hand. You could see this jigsaw puzzle piece in the other. They were going, now, where the bloody hell is that staying? That's right. So it's like incredibly effective. And actually, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. But you can use gimmicks in advance to attract the right sort of people. We did one of our best ones was, we had a thing once, it was like a teaser campaign we did in advance. And it said, what do Fred Perry, James Bond, and somebody else, Georgi Markov, let's say, have in common? And the answer, people coming up saying, were they all, I think they were Sagittarians, were they? Or were they all, were all adopted? Or was and actually the answer was they were all real names of delegates that had been on our training courses. And people said, God, I'll never have guessed that in a million. What sort of courses do you do there? And suddenly they were there on our stand talking about training courses. So it's really, don't be scared to use a gimmick in advance, rather on the days of the event. Come the revolution, I will ban brochures. However, I fully accept that some people feel the need to have brochures or feel that their clients need brochures, especially now these days, electronically, you can very easily send the brochure. If you do have to have a brochure, think about how you're going to vend your brochures. It'll be interesting when you go and see Ecobill and see what people are doing there. And the interesting thing is, we went to one particular show where we ended up testing the effectiveness, I guess, of the different types of ways of vending a brochure. We had a pile on a desk, we had stuff thrown on a table, we had the freestanding literature racks, we had the wall-mounted racks, and we had a neatly fanned-out display. And we got a stopwatch and we just counted how many of which type were taken. What would you say, folks, common sense is the least effective way of vending? fanning. Don't fan. A neatly fanned out display is anal. Right? You might think it looks pretty, nobody else does. And you can actually see exhibitors, or visitors, I guess, walk up to them and stress over which bit to take one from so they don't ruin your display. And worse than that, once I remember seeing a lady tut that someone had the audacity to ruin her display, stand up, huff, and walk and rearrange it all. It's like a ripple in the pond. You go, woo! The next most effective, or least effective, whichever way you're working, was a pile of brochures. And the problem with a pile of brochures, people don't know whether that's your personal stock or whether they can help themselves. And you'd see them walk up to your pile, furtively look over both shoulders, grab one and leg it down the aisle. Again, not great for interaction. The literature racks, whether they're floor standing or mounted on the wall, were exactly the same in terms of good, up to one point. And that point is the moment one of the pockets or one of the shelves was empty, people seemed reluctant to want to take. So as long as you keep those stocked up, it actually works really well for you. And strangely, the most effective way was just a pile of brochures on I'm not saying strewn everywhere, just chucked on the table. Because it was quite clear they were there for people to look at. People would walk up to them, start flicking through it, and then you can interact and engage with those clients. Some of the do's and don'ts, folks, most obvious ones, I guess, are do have breaks and build-in shifts. Exhibiting well is very hard to do all day on your feet, especially 2 days, 3 days on the trot. So if you've got the resources in terms of staff, then give them shifts and give them breaks. So you might have a morning shift or an afternoon shift, maybe with an hour overlap for lunch. You might want to be on Monday and Wednesday and Friday and not on Tuesday and Thursday and so on and so forth. Likewise, if you're going networking with the clients the night before, you don't want to be on the morning shift the next day. Also, folks, we live in fascist no-smoking times. So if you want a fag, you're going to walk miles these days, right? And then by the time you get there, you think, now that I'm here, I might have another one. And you end up having all the smokers outside networking, doing some decent stuff, and all the non-smokers working their nuts off on the stand. My heart bleeds not. Also, folks, be natural. Don't go and buy a brand new pair of shoes. It will kill your feet. And by natural, I also mean be natural in what you do. You know, don't have your shy, retiring wallflower thrust to the front of the stand. Say, go and get some people on our stand. Because literally all their body language will go, I'm scared, go away. And people will. Right? So play to your strengths. If you've got somebody, and I'm just stereotyping, but if you've got somebody who's very technical, who's not very gregarious, get somebody who is gregarious to go, hi, George, this is Techie, this is George. Boom, introduction, next. You might not want your most aggressive salespeople on your stand because actually what we know from customer research is they don't want to be sold to, but they do want to feel that they're buying from you. So maybe a more of a sort of receptionist approach is good. There's an unfortunate term called hooker. And what they do is these people actually hook people off the aisles and onto your stand. That's the sort of skill set that you need. And again, you know, think about the resources you've got. Ditto, folks, if we say, right, we're going in suits this year, don't make someone wear a suit who doesn't normally wear a suit. Because actually, no matter how many Hugo Boss Armani labels you give them, they will still look like somebody who doesn't normally wear a suit wearing a suit. Right? Look busy, folks. Interesting enough, two types of busy. There's good busy, bad busy. Good busy is the sort of busy where it looks fine to interrupt you. Okay? So good busy will be things like tidying up your stuff, getting rid of the newspapers, coffee cups, restocking the brochures. All that stuff is good busy. Bad busy is anything that basically gives you the message that says, I'm engaged, I'm busy doing something, and I'd be pissed off if you interrupted me. Okay? So bad busy, things like, you know, reading stuff, using laptops, mobile phones, all those things are bad busy examples because, again, it looks like you'd be a bit annoyed if you were interrupted. And also think up questions. Folks, it's one of the most ridiculous things because you know the answer to this. If you don't think up good questions to ask your visitors, human nature defaults to the most obvious question, which is, can I help you? And when somebody says to you, can I help you, what actually goes through your mind? Thank you. Right? So there's no point. Because you know you've got to get that answer, so ask the question. You know, you've done this. How many times have you been to a car boot sale somewhere or a flea market and you see a table full of stuff that you really want to look at? You go, oh. And as you approach it, the standholder stands up and goes, hello, can I help? And you go, no, thanks, just looking, thanks. And inside you go, I really wanted to look at that. I'm not going to do it with you standing there, you pillock. Right? And with these questions, folks, one question often will give you lots of answers. So if you ask a question, for example, you know, how familiar are you with our products and services, that will give you a raft of information. That will tell you where they are in the buying cycle, which other competitors they've looked at. If you've got competitor knowledge, you'll know what the budget is. So one question will give you all that information. But don't ask closed questions all the time. Keep it nice and open. But again, the problem with these questions is you can't be on your stand going, oh, hello, and what's that? Oh, I didn't think so. So you need what I'd call ice-breaking questions. Hi, how's it going? You know, what brought you to the show? Is it still raining outside? I'm gagging for a fag. I need to do it with a client. Do you want to come? Whatever it happens to be, something to find out, qualify if you need to, and then get into the nitty-gritty of finding out what their needs are. In terms of the don'ts, folks, a couple of obvious ones. Don't hover, glide, or pounce. Now, the other thing people do is a crab walk. They do this on stands, which is they're standing there, and after a while their legs start to wave, and they start walking like a crab, like that. And you see them, I say, what are you doing? Don't do that in real life. Why do you do that on your stand? The other sort of perennial favourite, I guess, is hunting. Do you know what I mean by hunting? Hunting is where you establish eye contact with someone at the far end of the hall, and you track them down every single aisle as they approach you. And as they approach you, they'll go right, and right again and re-emerge behind you. Hey, what's going on there? Again, people on your stand, folks, need to understand that if you've got eye contact, accompanied with a smile, it's a good thing. But when you get tired, the smile drops, and all you end up with is the eye contact, and that's really quite scary. Right? Don't eat, drink, or smoke. Not that you can these days, fascist swine. But the reason is eating and drinking, folks, are examples of what I call bad busy. They give you something and say, oh, I'm on my break, I'm having my lunch, leave me alone for Christ's sake, you know. The other reason eating and drinking is bad, actually, other than the bad busy signal, is usually it makes mess and spillage. If you do want to eat and drink on your stand, I recommend Cornish pasties on a competitive stand, because they fragment everyone, make a hell of a mess, right? Don't sit down. Folks, even if you've got chairs built into your stand, don't use them. If the customer sits down, by all means sit down with them. But don't sit down, because again, that says, oh, I'm knackered, look, I'm on my break. What do you want? Oh, can I help you? It's like, oh, no, you sit there, be comfortable, it's fine. Don't do it. Also, psychologically, if you remain standing, you feel less tired than if you're up, down, up, down, up, down. This is not exhaustive, folks. Don't read, hold meetings, use laptops, mobile phones. People used to sort of use mobile phones. Look at my mobile phone. I've got a mobile phone, look how small mine is, right? And then they realised that was a bit naff. So what they now do is they try and be surreptitious about it, like that. And it looks like they're urinating on the back wall of your stand. It's like, what are you doing? And likewise, folks, what I said, don't overcrowd the stand. You know, there's nothing worse than having 10 or 15 of you on the stand and not a customer in sight, because I will not go and join you. Follow up your leads once you've got them. Get their name, get their address. You know, we'll talk about scanning and stuff, but if you can get all those details with a quick swipe of the pen or whatever, that's great. But whether you use a tablet, a light pen, don't just assume everyone's got a business card, because they don't all have business cards and they might not want to give you one, or they might have run out of business cards. Capture the information you need, and also try and, if you can, qualify them somehow into hot, cold, medium, whatever. Because you want to identify, this is hot to trot, I need to call them now or a week after the show. This can wait a month or 2 months or how much longer it happens to be. Okay, so very quick summary, folks. I'm over my time. Agree what your objectives are. Do make use of all the PR stuff that happens up front. Remember, emailing and stuff is a really good thing. Just remind them, if they've said yes, remind them why they're going to come. Identify over the Vista profile who are the ones you want to attract and the ones onto your stand. What can we do to get them onto our stand? And once we've got them on our stand, make sure you've got a mechanic, some sort of mechanic, to capture their details, and then by all means follow up, and certainly do follow up, folks. We know that statistically 75% of companies admit to not following up their leads, so clearly that's important. I'm going to end with a couple of photographs just to show you some hideous things that people do. Hopefully this will remind you to avoid it. And also, I guess, the little sort of veiled, disguised threat behind this is, unless you guys want to appear in a presentation just like this in a year's time, I suggest you listen to what we've discussed. Obvious things here, folks, is these are all taken at prime exhibition time. Many of them are bad photographs because I take my mobile phone under the lapel of my jacket so I don't get slung out, but it shows you the sort of things people do. Those unfamiliar with the stand layout, folks, what you can see here is each of these things, aluminium post is a metre apart, so there's a 2x3. He's got colour stuff, he's got a bit of kit, he's got moving, which is better than stagnation, he's got colour pictures, he's got logos, and he's sat there eating crisps, reading a magazine. Now, you and I both know what happens if you ask somebody who's eating potato chips a question. Nobody wants to be showered in potato chips, and there's Rob, you just sit there, and he just sat there and ate crisps, and because nobody asked him more questions, he carried on and did it again, and bought another magazine and another flavour. Nice big stand there again. You can see they've got bullet points, they've got graphics, they've got plasma schemes, they've got nobody on it. And then they put all the crap in the corner, hidden it there on the little sort of flashers Mac. Oh, I can't see it. Emperor's New Clothes, it's gone, ta-da! This one here, big stand open on 3 sides, and yet we know they sell tripods, by the way, because they've populated the entire available floor space with erect tripods. So much so that it is almost impossible to walk onto their stand, and even the guy whose stand it is has to be right off at the edge because there's no room for him anymore. Yes, you have 1 or 2 up, yes, by all means, but you don't, and basically it just blocks any way onto your stand, and I defy a visitor to walk through there without killing themselves. There we go, look at that. Ham and pineapple pizza, Hawaiian. And actually approached this guy, I said to him, what are you doing? He said, well, he said, good, isn't it? I said, what, the pizza? He goes, no. He said, I'm so conscientious, I'm not even having a lunch break, I'm eating on my stand. I said, that's disgusting. You don't mix ham and pineapple on the same pizza, for Christ's sake. Talking of pizzas, there again, look, breakfast bar, cunningly designed. Right, oh, I'll have lunch. Oh, I'll join you. Great. And they ended up having lunch together and just sat there, backs to the audience. Interesting enough, 2 posters, 3 logos, and loads of brochures on the floor. No staff, no furniture, no nothing. And the reason I took this photograph is there was a bona fide visitor bending down and picking up a brochure off the floor. So the tagline here should really be, no matter how crap you are, somebody somewhere will still do business with you. But you've got to go some to beat this. Again, folks, over her shoulder you can see how busy it is, but this bit was quiet. She got distracted, looked at the brochure, turned up, approached it, started reading, back to the aisle. Nobody's going to talk to her. Again, nobody on the stand, rubbish, clutter everywhere, stuff all over the floor. It's not a cafeteria. Interesting enough, this fire extinguisher company, brochures, literature, products, a rather fat sales director there, sat with his laptop. Looks like he needed a neck brace. He's not, he's just lardy. And he'll go back and he'll go, nobody came on our stand. Well, of course nobody came on your stand, you pillock. You occupied most of it, fatty. Mary Celeste, empty stand, folks. Lunchtime. Oh, it's lunch. I'm on my lunch. Visitors walk past when you're having lunch. And this one was my favourite. Look, neatly found out brochures, nothing else. You could smoke in those days, happy days. And they had the foresight to hire an ashtray, so I got to know these two girls really well. But the really scary things, folks, you can just see it at the very top of the screen there, 3 letters. PLC. That isn't Harry Scroggins Engineering, who should know better. That is what a PLC does with their money, if they understand why they're exhibiting. Okay, last thing, folks, and I promise I'll get off. One thing that's not normally in the books, but actually makes a hell of a difference. If you are going to be at the show this year, then do try and make sure that when you're there, it looks like you're enjoying yourself. Because if you have fun, then people go, look how I talk to them. But if you see them, they go, we're really good, it must be really professional. Nobody's going to come and talk to you. Don't scare them off. Do yourself a favour. Okay, I'm not going to ask questions now. If you've got questions, I will be next door. Therefore, grab me. But thank you for your attention and very good luck. Thank you.